Humans from birth carry suffering as an unavoidable destiny in this lifetime. Whether rich or poor, powerful or ordinary, all must experience the stages of suffering: birth, aging, illness and death. Some may ask, why must I endure suffering, while others feel helpless and accept their fate? However, the Buddha, who transcended suffering after attaining enlightenment, did not settle for mere acceptance. He paved a path for all beings to overcome suffering. To understand this path, we must first comprehend the nature of suffering, that suffering is not random but the inevitable result of deep-rooted causes within our consciousness and actions. In Buddhism, suffering is not only physical pain, but also the agony of the mind, feelings of insecurity, fear, regret, or dependence on things that are never permanent. The Buddha realized that human life is never truly complete. Discontent weaves itself into every emotion, every thought. Suffering, known as Dukkha, is the fundamental state of existence for all beings. Even joy, if prolonged, transforms into suffering because the nature of everything is to change and decay. We suffer because we cling to fleeting things, seek temporary happiness, and forget that all things are impermanent. The Four Noble Truths, the path to understanding suffering. The Buddha condensed his entire teaching into the Four Noble Truths, which are four fundamental insights into suffering and the way to transcend it. The Four Noble Truths consist of 1. The truth of suffering. Dukkha, the reality of suffering. Life contains suffering. Birth, aging, illness and death, separation, resentment, and even the things we love, all are forms of suffering. 2. The truth of the origin of suffering. Samudaya, the cause of suffering. Suffering does not appear randomly. It is the result of craving, ignorance, and attachment. Clinging and desire are the roots of suffering. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha, the end of suffering. When people extinguish craving and ignorance, suffering ceases as well. 4. The truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, Magga, the path to liberation from suffering. To achieve liberation, one must follow the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes practices that help release all attachments, leading to purity and inner peace. The Four Noble Truths act as a guiding compass, directing us from understanding suffering, recognizing its cause, to realizing the possibility of liberation, ultimately guiding us along the path of awakening as taught by the Buddha. Suffering is not an unchangeable destiny. Rather, it is a challenge for us to overcome, to grow, and to move toward enlightenment. The Buddha emphasized that in life, all suffering has a reason, and liberation is a completely achievable potential for each being. The next section will delve deeper into the root causes of suffering and why humans are drawn into the endless cycle of birth, aging, illness, and death. Within these causes, we will find the right direction to eliminate suffering and live a life of peace. Buddhism views all suffering in life as neither random nor meaningless. On the contrary, suffering is a part of the flow of karma, the result of beings' actions, thoughts, and desires. According to the Buddha, the root of this suffering lies in the deep causes within each person's consciousness: ignorance, craving, and attachment. From birth, humans are bound within the cycle of birth and death. This is not merely an abstract concept, but a psychological state, a mental condition that anyone who lives experiences to some degree. Suffering is most clearly present in life's experiences, where people face birth, aging, illness, and death, separation from loved ones, encounters with what they dislike, or endless feelings of lack. However, at a deeper level, the root of such suffering does not lie in external circumstances, but in the mind's own attachments, desires, and grasping. When the mind does not comprehend the impermanent nature of life, it clings to the self, wanting to hold tight to things and desiring them to bring eternal happiness. Yet everything in this life is impermanent. The joy of acquiring something may initially lift the spirit, but soon it transforms into worry at the thought that it could one day be lost. Therefore, craving, attachment to impermanent things, the body, fame, and material possessions are the fundamental roots of suffering. To realize this, the Buddha teaches that we must overcome ignorance and thoroughly grasp the nature of all things as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self. Impermanence is the transient nature of all things. Everything constantly changes, nothing is everlasting. Joy, sorrow, things we love or hate, all are fleeting and temporary. When people realize and understand impermanence, the mind begins to let go of attachments, becomes less grasping of the self, and refrains from chasing endless desires. This is when suffering gradually fades away. Yet mere awareness of impermanence is not enough to fully escape suffering. The Buddha teaches that only when we truly let go of cravings, break free from attachment to the self, and release our misconceptions about self and things, can suffering come to a complete end. The Buddha did not stop at identifying the cause of suffering. He also laid out a practical path for people to cultivate and transcend it. This is the Noble Eightfold Path, 8 ethical and practical principles that, if correctly applied, bring peace to beings' minds, freeing them from attachments and entanglements. The Noble Eightfold Path is not just theory, but a way of life that leads to tranquility and freedom. Practitioners begin with right view, a correct understanding of life's nature, progressing to right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and the remaining elements to cultivate both body and mind, step by step, bringing a person to purity and liberation. Those who dedicate themselves to following the Buddha's teachings will not only find freedom from suffering, but also reach an absolute state of peace, where suffering holds no influence over the soul. This is the highest goal of Buddhism, liberation. Ultimately, suffering is an opportunity for people to reflect, understand, and release the roots of their pain. Only when we understand the essence of suffering, recognize its roots within our own minds, and confidently walk the path of Dharma, can we touch upon true tranquility. The path to liberation from suffering, as taught by the Buddha, requires persistence and deep mindfulness. It is not merely through intellect or thought that one can free oneself from attachments, but through actual practice. The Noble Eightfold Path comprises 8 core elements, similar to the branches of an ancient tree, all directing towards a common purpose, freedom from suffering. Each element acts as a step, gradually helping a person release the grip of impermanence, untangle the deeply rooted attachments in the mind, and ultimately attain liberation. The first step on this path is right view, a correct understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Recognizing that suffering is an inevitable part of life does not aim to instill despair or resignation, but rather urges each person to uncover the cause and strive to end suffering. With right view, we no longer perceive life solely through material values, fame, or pleasure, but instead understand that these things do not bring lasting happiness. Right view is the clear insight into the true nature of life, showing that nothing is worth clinging to because everything is constantly changing. This forms the foundation for letting go of greed, anger, and delusion. Following right view is right intention, a way of thinking and perceiving the world with compassion and without desire. When one's intention is accurate, every desire and action is directed towards not causing suffering to others and refrains from being drawn into selfish, egotistical pursuits. Right intention enables us to view life with tolerance, without hatred, anger, or entanglement in competition or success and failure. It is a mindset directed towards inner peace, the first step towards true freedom. Next is right speech, the practice of truthful words, without deception, exaggeration, or harmful speech. When the mind is calm and speech is truthful, one no longer worries about lies or confusion in relationships. Right speech helps practitioners live sincerely and creates positive energy around them, contributing to a life of harmony and tranquility. Right action is the practice of rightful actions, refraining from killing, stealing, and other harmful behaviors. Each action leaves an imprint on the mind and contributes to the cycle of karma. When our actions stem from a pure heart and cause no harm, we not only lighten our karmic load, but also live harmoniously with others and all living beings. Then comes right livelihood, which means living by honest work without engaging in professions that harm others or society. Livelihood is not only a means of survival, but also a path through which we can embody compassion and contribute to the common good. Right livelihood enables practitioners to sustain their lives without compromising the ethics or happiness of others, without creating further negative karma or entangling in unnecessary troubles. Right effort is the diligent perseverance on the path of goodness. The Buddha taught that the path of Dharma requires continuous effort, not just momentary dedication, but a steady determination to maintain a pure life. Right effort helps us eliminate bad habits, cultivate virtues, and develop a mind oriented towards goodness. It is the strength that propels us forward, enabling us to overcome all temptations and obstacles on the journey to liberation. Right mindfulness is the practice of mindfulness, maintaining a calm and stable mind amidst the fluctuations of life. When the mind is trained in right mindfulness, we can observe and recognize every emotion and thought without being carried away by them. Right mindfulness helps us see the temporary nature of joy and sorrow, allowing us to remain unattached and calm in any situation. Right concentration is deep focus, the meditation that brings the mind into a stable and tranquil state. Through right concentration, we truly enter an inner peace where suffering no longer affects the soul. When we reach right concentration, the mind becomes as steady as a mountain, unshaken by life's storms. The Noble Eightfold Path is not an abstract theory, but a practical method of practice that helps people overcome attachments and reach liberation. It is not only a way to alleviate suffering, but a way to live a complete and peaceful life. With the Noble Eightfold Path, we are guided step by step towards freedom from attachment to the self, reaching a state of selflessness, where all suffering dissolves. Life is a journey towards true freedom, where there are no longer any bindings on the soul. The Noble Eightfold Path outlined by the Buddha is the guiding light, the map that helps beings overcome all obstacles of life. All suffering, when viewed with right view and right mindfulness, becomes a profound lesson leading us to peace. The Buddha did not promise a life without suffering, but he showed that suffering itself could be the key to liberation when we understand its nature and live according to the path of enlightenment. Meditation is an essential part of the journey to liberation from suffering, as taught by the Buddha. Meditation calms the mind, freeing it from external disturbances and gradually removing negative elements within. The Buddha encouraged the practice of meditation not only to attain temporary peace, but to see through the true nature of existence. Through meditation, one can directly experience the state of non-self and impermanence, not just as a concept, but as a deep realization within. Meditation is a way to cleanse the mind, gradually helping one release attachments and eliminate the seeds of suffering that have accumulated over time. In meditation, there are two main methods: samatha, calming, meditation, and vipassana, insight meditation. Samatha meditation is a method that helps the mind focus on a single object, bringing it to a calm and stable state. When the mind is trained to reach a state of concentration, it becomes strong and is no longer easily disturbed by sudden thoughts or emotions. Samatha meditation calms the mind, preventing it from easily being swept away by negative emotions. This is the first step in preparing for vipassana, the method that enables practitioners to observe reality and realize the impermanent nature of all things. Vipassana meditation helps practitioners understand that all emotions, thoughts, and even our very sense of self have no inherent substance, constantly changing. From this deep understanding, the mind gradually releases attachments and cravings, reaching an inner peace that nothing external can disturb. Meditation is not simply sitting quietly or withdrawing from life. It is a process of facing and understanding oneself. In Buddhism, facing one's own mind is the best way to see clearly the roots of suffering. Meditation allows us to observe each stream of emotion, each thought arising in the mind, without judgment or attachment. In this way, whenever a negative feeling arises, we recognize it without letting it dominate or lead us. Gradually, the mind ceases to react easily to every situation and instead maintains tranquility, like a still lake that remains calm despite strong winds or heavy rain. When the mind reaches peace through meditation, the practitioner begins to realize that suffering no longer burdens or distresses them as it once did. Understanding of non-self and impermanence becomes clearer, causing attachments and anger to gradually dissolve. This is the peak of meditation, the state the Buddha referred to as nirvana, where all suffering ends, all desires are extinguished, and the mind is completely freed from disturbances. This state is not a distant place or a miraculous attainment available to only a few. It is a potential inherent in every person. Meditation is the key that opens the door to this liberation. Applying these teachings to modern life, we can learn to master our minds, not allowing ourselves to be swept away by momentary emotions or external pressures. Work stress, complex relationships, or worries about the future can all become lighter when we have a calm mind and know how to look deeply into their nature. Every time we recognize that negative thoughts or emotions are only passing and not our true essence, we gain better control over ourselves, are less driven by emotions, and avoid creating further suffering for ourselves and others. Buddhist teachings are a treasure of wisdom, a path that guides people from ignorance to enlightenment. Applying these teachings is not easy, but if we can practice them step by step with perseverance and determination, we will gradually see positive changes in our lives. Suffering, instead of being a burden, can become a motivation for us to look deeply within, learn to let go, and walk the path of liberation. The Buddha never promised a life without hardship or challenges, but he affirmed that all suffering can be overcome. Through cultivation, mindfulness, and the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, people can gradually move towards a state of liberation where suffering is no longer part of life. We can live lightly, peacefully, unbound by impermanent things, and always keep a steady mind, no matter what may happen. The path the Buddha taught is one of mindfulness and liberation, a message to all beings that suffering is not destiny, but a state that can be transcended if we follow the light of wisdom and compassion. Most of the suffering and insecurity in life stems from unfulfilled desires, expectations that exceed reality, or comparing ourselves to others. These cravings are like flames. The more we try to fuel everything around us, the more we burn ourselves. Understanding this principle, the Buddha teaches us that to live a peaceful life, we must first learn to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up, but rather releasing our attachments to material possessions, fame, or relationships. This detachment allows us to view life with lightness, to welcome everything that comes and goes without the weight or pain of attachment. Practicing mindfulness in every daily action is an effective way to cultivate this detachment. When we live with mindfulness, every action, word, and thought becomes more conscious and clear. Mindfulness enables us to recognize emotions as they arise without letting them control our mind. For example, when anger or anxiety arises, instead of being swept away, we can observe it, recognize it, and understand that it is just a temporary state that will pass. Mindfulness thus prevents us from getting caught in the whirlpool of negative emotions, keeping them from dominating or harming ourselves and those around us. By living mindfully, we gradually reduce the factors that cause suffering. Every thought, word, and action becomes intentional rather than being driven by impulsive reactions. When we achieve a mindful way of living, the small annoyances in life become less significant. We feel our spirit lighten, no longer bound by everyday issues like work, finances, or complex relationships. Facing difficulties and challenges, those who live by the Buddha's teachings see them as opportunities to train the mind. Suffering and obstacles are not inherently negative, but are valuable lessons that teach us how to confront, adapt, and grow. Instead of escaping or blaming, we recognize suffering as a part of life. The Buddha advises us not to flee from suffering, for it is in facing it that we truly understand our inner strength and the profound meaning of peace. As we practice mindfulness and detachment, we stop searching for happiness outside and begin to turn inward. True happiness does not come from fame, wealth, or temporary possessions. Genuine happiness is a stable state of mind, unshaken by life's changes, a sense of joy in the simple moments of the present. This is something modern people often struggle to recognize as they are constantly swept into society's fast-paced flow. The Buddha's principles are not only for practitioners, but are suitable for anyone seeking peace in modern life. Step by step, we can bring elements of the Noble Eightfold Path into work, relationships, and daily activities. For example, practicing right speech helps us listen and understand others, thus reducing conflicts and misunderstandings. Practicing right action enables us to live sincerely, avoiding actions that cause harm to others. Right livelihood helps us choose a profession that does not compromise ethics or negatively impact society. Above all, mindfulness is the key that allows us to master our actions and reactions, keeping our mind peaceful and light. When we view life through the lens of Buddhism, we will see that all suffering can be overcome if we practice, live mindfully, and let go. Suffering is not an unchangeable fate, but a part of the journey toward growth. The path to liberation outlined by the Buddha is not a miracle that instantly transforms suffering into happiness, but a gradual process of transformation within the mind. Only when we learn to live within a peace, unaffected by external circumstances, can we truly attain liberation. Life is a series of valuable lessons, and the path taught by the Buddha is a way to transform from ignorance to wisdom, from suffering to joy. As we live and practice his teachings, all suffering becomes lighter, and life becomes a journey of peace, no longer burdened by psychological weight. The path to liberation from suffering has been laid out by the Buddha, and it is up to us to decide whether to follow it. Every step on this path brings us peace, freedom, and helps us reach the true happiness that lies deep within our own hearts. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to follow and listen. I hope these insights have brought you new perspectives, peace, and motivation on your journey to find inner tranquility. If you find this video helpful, please share it with your loved ones to spread the message of mindfulness and compassion to others. Don't forget to subscribe to Awakening Mind and turn on the notification bell to not miss out on more beneficial videos. Your support is our motivation to continue creating meaningful content. Thank you very much.